Hey guys, Jack on Wrist here, back with another video, and in today's video I want to do a 1-month review of my new Rolex Explorer reference 124270. As many of you might already know, I previously owned the Rolex reference 114270, the last generation version of the 36mm Explorer, and so I feel like I have some decent perspective on kind of comparing these two watches and just kind of sharing my overall experience with the watch in the first month of ownership. In this video, I'm not going to dive too deep into the actual specifications of the watch. We'll leave that for a full review, but instead I want to talk about my ownership experience over the last month, as I've worn this pretty much every day, and talk about where I bought it from and kind of all the different things that relate to the purchase of it. So just to start at the beginning, basically I bought this new Rolex Explorer 36mm on eBay. Obviously taking advantage of their authentication guarantee that they have going on. I've had really not too many issues with that program. I made a video actually about that program not too long ago because they kind of messed up on a few different things with the guarantee card that they provide. But generally speaking, I've had a good experience. I've never had any fake watches or any watches that I've at least had a suspicion that they're fake. So I got very lucky with this watch because I found a 2024 production, and so basically I got a full set with box, papers, warranty, all that kind of stuff. And the cool thing is, as many of you guys already know probably, is that the Rolex warranty follows the watch and not the person who bought it. So I did receive basically a full 5-year Rolex factory warranty. That was certainly a huge factor for me, as I know the 32 series of movements from Rolex have had some alleged amplitude issues. I know that the evidence on that is sometimes anecdotal, but I figured I would stay safe and try to get one with as big of a warranty as I could get. So I was very happy to get basically a full 5 years. And again, I'll dive deeper into the 32 series of movements and their sort of alleged problems in a future full review, but for now, we're just going to focus on my wearing experience. And as I mentioned earlier, I did previously own a reference 114270, the older 36mm Explorer, and that was actually one of the watches that I had sold off to buy this new piece. I made a whole video about that transaction just a couple of videos ago, so I recommend you check it out. And so this purchase was kind of an interesting one because, of course, the excitement of getting a new watch was certainly there, but I knew that the new reference was not going to be much different than the old one. So sort of bridging off that point, I think that's a really good way to look at this particular transaction for me and my experience with this Explorer thus far. I mean, I certainly had a lot of excitement getting the new reference in. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to enjoy the new watch. Obviously, the solid bracelet, solid clasp, on-the-fly adjustment, new movement, etc., etc. You guys all probably know the differences between the two watches. But, you know, it's sort of an incremental increase in terms of enjoyment for me. I mean, I really enjoyed my older reference, the 114270. I thought I was going to die on that watch. And so I made this sort of upgrade because I wanted to experience some of the newer Rolex modern features. And again, I'm not disappointed in that, but I do think it's not as big of a jump as you would think. I mean, the older reference had solid end links as well, but did not have sort of a modern clasp, no on-the-fly adjustment, and just a rock-solid 31 series of movement. And so I really do think that I've, again, not made a mistake in this transaction, but I will say, again, it's not that crazy of a shift. When people say that the older references of Rolex have sort of a neo-vintage flair, that sort of feeling that they have with them, you know, I thought it was a little cheesy, you know, when I heard those people saying that, because I thought, hey, you know, what's the difference? I mean, they're pretty much the same watch, pretty much the same dimensions, but I can kind of tell, you know, I think there certainly is a neo-vintage feeling that comes with that old watch, and I can't really even put it into words. You kind of just have to feel the two watches side by side, and I don't know what it is, but I certainly feel like the old reference is, there's nothing wrong with it. If I could go back in time, I maybe would have kept it, but now that I've upgraded, I'm not going to turn back towards it, if that makes any sense. Maybe it doesn't, but that's at least my logic on the situation. I've made this move, I'm not going to go backward, and I don't think you can really go wrong with either of these watches. And that kind of brings me into the wearing experience of this newer reference, the 124270. I mean, it's great. I mean, you know, there's really nothing to complain about. All those different things that make this watch feel like a real tool, really solid, are all there. The heft is certainly there. Again, comparing this to my older reference, which I keep alluding to, I do think that it is a big jump. And I think just to kind of compare to other watches in general, you know, I've had a lot of different luxury pieces in my day, and this feels as solid as any of them, and probably more solid than them all. I mean, you know, I think the new Rolex quality and the things that they're doing cannot be really downsized. I think that they're great. When you have a watch like this, which is supposed to be a tool watch, I think it's great to have that solid feeling. And so no regrets in terms of the overall wearing experience. Also, to comment on the 19mm lug width that comes down to a 14mm width at the clasp, I would say that's not been a problem for me. I don't think this watch really has any problems with its dimensions. I know a lot of people complained about how, you know, this has sort of weird dimensions that make it look smaller on wrist. I mean, for me at least, I have a 6.5-inch wrist, which I think is sort of on the smaller side. So I've had no issues with kind of how it sits on my wrist, how it looks, how it feels. But again, that's really up to, you know, each and every one of you, how you guys like it. But I've not really had any complaints. And in terms of the 19mm lug width, I'm not really the type of guy who's looking to swap out straps on a bracelet of this quality. So I'm kind of not really a complainer in that regard, but you know, again, to each their own. I've also really enjoyed the 70-hour power reserve. It's certainly been a nice treat for me in the few days throughout this past month that I have not worn this piece and threw on a couple random Casios. It was really nice to come back to this watch still running. I know in today's day and age, 70 hours isn't exactly groundbreaking. I know that the Swatch Group has their 80-hour power reserve on pretty much all their watches, and you know, Oris has an 8-day power reserve on one of theirs. You know, everything's getting a little crazy, but I think 70 hours is a really nice number. And again, you know, it's nice that you can put it down for almost 3 days and not really have to worry about it too much. One last comment on some of the newer features on this watch. I've really enjoyed the anti-magnetic properties of the new 32 series of movements that are housed within this new model of the Rolex Explorer. I personally, on occasion, will work with equipment that in theory could damage a lesser movement, and so I find it just more comforting to have that extra utility. So again, another reason why this watch was a nice upgrade for me. So overall, I would say I've really enjoyed this new Rolex Explorer purchase. I'm certainly really happy with the watch. I got a really good deal on it in my opinion, got the full 5-year warranty, which is just icing on the cake. And I really enjoy a lot of the newer features that come with the watch, the on-the-fly adjustment, the anti-magnetic resistance, the shock resistance as well within the movement. Those are all really awesome things that I think are really gonna stand the test of time and really make this purchase an enjoyable one throughout the next many years and hopefully the rest of my life. But the only thing is, I would probably say if I could go back in time and talk to my slightly younger self 2 months ago when making this original decision to sell my older watches, including my older reference Explorer for this new one, I'd probably just say slow down a bit. I really made the decision to go from the older reference Explorer to the new one very quickly. I think I got very obsessed with sort of the numbers and the details and the specifications, and I compared the older reference to the new one a lot. And of course, that's sort of a weird game to play because of course the newer reference Explorer is going to have the quote-unquote advantage. It's going to have a lot more fun bells and whistles going on with it. And so on paper, you're always going to pretty much come to the conclusion that the newer reference is the one that you want. And I think that's kind of how I played this whole thing out, and that's what kind of drove the decision making. And again, I don't regret this purchase. It's certainly not a purchase I plan on going back on in any way, but it's really more of an interesting comment on kind of how we build our collections and how we buy watches. I think a lot of times we do get into the weeds and compare watches that we have today to watches that we really desire, and you know, let that drive our decision making a lot of times. And so, you know, I think that's again what happened in this case, as I just said. And I think we can get kind of caught in that trap. So, you know, if you're someone out there that has an older reference Explorer or really an older reference of a watch that has a sort of newer alternative, I really think you should take your time, slow down, and make sure it's the right purchase for you. I know a lot of you guys probably already know that, but that's at least something that I wanted to hear, you know, a few months ago, or wish I heard a few months ago at the very least. And so, again, just this is my experience with this particular purchase. I'm still very happy with it. Again, no regrets at all. But I'm sort of incrementally happier with this purchase, and I think it's sort of such a small difference in happiness compared to the cost that I actually paid to make this purchase. So wouldn't go back, but something to think about. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel and give this video a like, as well as let me know any thoughts you have in the comment section down below. Let me know if you've ever bought a newer version of a watch that you had an older reference of and regretted that upgrade, or really enjoyed that upgrade, and really just what your experience was in general. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.